Hello and welcome to Inside. We come to you with another episode, Swapanji and me, and Swapanji requires no introduction whatsoever. He's a former Rajya Sabha member as well as one of India's finest political commentators. Today, both of us discuss with our in-house India Foundation expert on AFPAC, Captain Alok Bansal, the unfolding situation in Pakistan and what we expect to see in the future. Alokji, welcome. This is your second time on Insight?
Certainly.
He's our in-house AFPAC expert. So Alokji, one of the questions that's on our mind about Afghanistan, Pakistan is really what has been happening with Imran Khan to start off with. Where is he? Has the world forgotten him?
See, Imran continues to be incarcerated. He's in Adiala jail. In fact, lot of attempts are being made by his party members to get him out, and many of them are trying to reach out to external powers. There is a mistaken belief in many of the PTI supporters that with Trump in power in US, he'll be able to get Imran Khan out. But yesterday only Qureshi, who has been the party vice president and a former foreign minister of Pakistan, very clearly told his party members that to expect that Trump will do anything to get Imran Khan out is, I think, mistaken belief on their part. But the fact is that Imran Khan, despite such long incarceration, continues to be the most popular politician in Pakistan. And all the negotiations that have been happening between Imran Khan and government are not moving forward because army has taken a strong line. In fact, just a few days back, he wrote a letter to army chief, which army chief has made very clearly he has not received any letter, nor is he interested in reading any letter. So in Pakistan's case, where army rules the roost, unless of course the army comes to a compromise with the PTI or PTI is able to assuage the army, I doubt whether he will be able to come out.
Which is a very familiar story. We had the same story with Nawaz Sharif at one time. We had this story with Benazir. And now we are having the same story with Imran Khan. The army being the ultimate veto.
Yeah.
See, there is a slight difference between all the cases, which I must make it very clearly. Firstly, Benazir never was persecuted the way Imran or Nawaz were. Because
under Ziaul Haq, she was.
Yes, but in Islamic country, women cannot be persecuted to that level. Her husband was. Asif Ali Zardari was actually tortured, physically tortured. He was actually, his tongue was slit and all those things happened. Similarly, Nawaz Sharif was actually subjected to third degree treatment to some extent.
He was assassinated finally.
That was not really the government's doing. That government facilitated it to some extent by not providing her adequate security, which Musharraf was actually negotiating with her. But government did not directly contribute to her. You can't say the government was involved in her assassination. She was assassinated, government is attributable, but you can't say that the government killed her or something like that. But what is important is that in this particular case, the PTI demonstration shook the very foundations of army's iron-clad grip over Pakistani state, because for the first time a corps commander's house was ransacked. A lot of people within the army showed support for PTI, and this carefully created monolith which army has constructed of the security state in Pakistan was shaken up when PTI demonstrations took place. And the current army chief has personal animosity against Imran and would not want him to come out. So that's why he's taken a very, very strong line against him. I'm not trying to say that army chiefs have not taken such lines in the past. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was hanged by an army chief who was appointed by him. So dictators can do anything. But at the moment, we need to understand that times have changed. 2025 is certainly not pre-social media, pre-mobile era. So modes of communications have improved. So as a result, even though Imran Khan is in jail, he is able to communicate to some extent with his party members and others, which was not the case earlier when Bhutto and others were incarcerated.
But the government in Pakistan has a lot more problems also apart from political instability.
I mean, isn't Pakistan in the army and the Pakistan establishment as a whole mindful that the country has been steadily moving into global irrelevance? And where Pakistan was, it occupied a certain strategic position at one time during the Afghan thing. Now, I don't think anybody bothers about it except insofar as an irritant.
See, Pakistan's military and Pakistan's analysts have often deluded themselves into believing that their geographical position will bail them out of any crisis. Permanently. It is something like they used to earlier say that here you have a person who is actually pointing gun at his own temple and threatening the world that if you don't do something, I'll shoot myself. Today they feel that China will bail them out because the CPEC passes through their territory. They feel the Gulf states will bail them out because they provide them incentives and they behave like their serfs when they come and visit them. In fact, some of the Gulf rulers have states within Pakistan, the huge states running into thousands of acres in Pakistan where they come for bustard shootings and shooting of those endangered species of birds and animals which they routinely organize. So they feel that these people will be able to bail them out. The Pakistani establishment actually only trembles when their personal interests are hurt. Like when US denies them visa, that hurts them because most Pakistani elite have at least one children or one relative in US. So if US prevents them from coming, then that directly and individually affects them. They are really least bothered as to what happens to the economy because they have piled up so much of wealth in their own coffers that irrespective of half the population dying of hunger, they would continue to live in comfort.
But let me ask you, they have all this political instability happening. They have, economic turmoil. But they also have now this relationship which they were so sure of with the Taliban coming back at them.
The strategic depth appears to have become something else.
See, this is what one Pakistani columnist said, that actually rather than Pakistan getting a strategic depth in Afghanistan with Taliban's coming, Taliban has got a strategic depth in Pakistan in form of TTP. So that's a fact. As far as economics is concerned, I just wanted to say that from the crisis zone when their foreign exchange reserves had actually fallen below $3 billion, yesterday's report says that the foreign exchange reserves are above $11 billion, that is as State Bank of Pakistan. Overall foreign exchange reserves are over 16 billion. So prima facie it looks as relatively stable position. But on the revenue front there is a huge shortfall and IMF is doing a review. The moment IMF tightens the grip, you will find that this foreign exchange reserves which they have built up will disappear overnight actually. Now coming to Taliban, the problem is, and this I think is for the global community to understand, they have really not understood Taliban well. Taliban is an ideological beast. To identify or to deal with them in classic geopolitical context as you would deal with another territorial state would be a grave mistake. Taliban has never ever in its entire existence compromised on its ideology. It may have made tactical concessions before they came to power, saying that yes, we'll allow women to work or things like that. But they have really not made major ideological deviations. They refused to hand over Osama bin Laden to America at the cost of being annihilated. And now also they have never ever given one member of any organization that is ideologically affiliated with them, either ETIM or TTP, to either China or Pakistan. They may have removed them from the place where they could pose threat, they could have moved them to win the... So I think this basic factor neither Pakistan understood nor the US understood, and as long as you keep making these mistakes, Taliban being an ideological beast would keep enhancing and expanding their reach. And that Pakistan didn't understand, and they're paying a price for it.
It's something which a lot of people haven't understood. If you look at Syria, if you put on a suit, you believe that someone may undergoes a fundamental change. And I think that we're just waiting for whoever the Taliban person is to put on some Western attire, maybe. But is your comment really aimed at the overtures which India has made to Afghanistan?
Firstly, I must say I couldn't agree more that the Western world, which doesn't understand Islamic theology, very often tries to look at these radical Islamists from the prism of socio-economic factors. So the leftist IR specialists look at everything in terms of socio-economic, not realizing that there is a strong theological underpinning which actually drives their motives. And this is what's happening in Syria. He is just masquerading as a moderate by wearing a three-piece suit, which probably... I haven't gone into the sartorial details of that individual, but yes, the Western world has actually got carried away. But as I said, so same as this case with Taliban. People propagated Taliban 2.0. I have really not seen the 2.0, and I have been shouting from the rooftop since August when Taliban came that there is not going to be any difference. They are not going to be any inclusive. They are going to hit at women. They are going to hit with ethnic minorities. Now, as far as India's reaching out is concerned, I have no doubts that India needs to engage with them. But providing them legitimacy, to my mind, is going to be disastrous, because India also needs to understand this fact that Taliban will not make any ideological compromises. They may keep quiet tactically, because at this point of time it suits them to say that our aims and objectives are within the geographical frontiers of Afghanistan. But their eventual aims and objectives are global. So once they consolidate in Afghanistan, they would want to propagate their ideology and their influence across the borders into the region, which Pakistan may be the first target. But eventually India would also come into the crossfires, and that we need to be prepared if we are actually trying to help them grow.
One of the crucial elements of jihad is territory. And you often say that Taliban has fulfilled this very crucial element towards jihad. Will that embolden groups around? Because it was, I think, yesterday or day before yesterday, there was a small meet in POK on this thing with Hamas, JEM, and I think another group.
See, I think this is one thing which very often Western analysts don't understand, because as I said, they try to define even the radical Islamists in terms of socio-economic terms, and they often fail, not realizing that all 9/11 perpetrators were from, most of them were from reasonably well-to-do families, most of them were educated. So they don't understand Islamic theology, and that's what I have been trying to say, that capturing of territory for Islamic theology, for jihad, is a very, very important factor. Please understand, when Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi had captured Mosul, you saw a surge of people wanting to join Islamic State, because that provided a theological validation. Similarly, now with Taliban firmly ensconced in Afghanistan, it has provided theological validation. The West has also fallaciously believed that they can make a distinction between Al-Qaeda and Taliban, not realizing that Al-Qaeda has always talked of waging a global jihad under the leadership of Amirul Mu'minin, who was earlier Mullah Omar and today is Mullah Akhundzada. Al-Qaeda at no stage of time has ever said that our jihad will be under Osama bin Laden or Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, or for that matter Ayman al-Zawahiri or anybody else. So this symbiotic relationship between the two and the theological requirement of Taliban for Al-Qaeda is very, very important, and that I think they don't understand, and that's why they need to understand that Al-Qaeda can never let go of Taliban. So that's a fact which they need.
So what is the implication of this for Pakistan?
See, now the problem for Pakistan is that they have encouraged Taliban. Now you have a huge lot of people.
They have encouraged a lot of Islamist movements.
Yes. They have encouraged a lot of Islamist movements, which initially they could control some of them, like Lashkar-e-Toiba, etc. They controlled. Their problem started with Jaish-e-Mohammed, which they started. Jaish-e-Mohammed is not totally under their control and started aligning with Taliban, and they started having a problem. And now Taliban's influence has created Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Now all the TTP members, though they are Pakistanis, consider Amirul Mu'minin to be their leader. So their ideological affinity is to Taliban, and they feel that this particular regime is un-Islamic. It's actually not needs to be toppled, and that's what they are trying to do. And now Pakistan doesn't know, because having paid overemphasis on religion, it's very difficult to delegitimize it, because you have always been identifying yourself in terms of a religion. The Pakistan's creation was on two-nation theory that said all citizens of Pakistan are Muslims and Pakistanis. So Islam was always given an emphasis. Now this overemphasis on Islam has created two problems. First is, who is a Muslim? Because Islam has never been a monolith from the time Prophet was on his deathbed. And that's why we see sectarian conflicts, and that's going on and getting aggravated day by day. You see in Qurram Agency, in Parchinar, in erstwhile FATA, a conflict which has been going on for hundreds of days, and state has not been able to bring it to an end. They have not been able to send relief supplies to the people who are entrapped. Hundreds of people have been killed. The second problem is this: the moment you start overemphasizing emphasizing on religion, then religion becomes primary, the state becomes secondary. And that's what we are seeing in terms of Taliban and TTP. For them, anything that does not meet their primitive interpretation of Islam is against the religion. And
can the army put down the TTP?
no, not to my mind. Please understand, today there is a deep radicalization even within the armed forces. There is a substantive number of people in all three services which are radicalized. Fortunately for Pakistan, the radicalization in armed forces is far more in Navy and Air Force than in the army. So as a result, the regimental system, etc., has managed to keep some sort of a control. From the time of Musharraf, they have tried to weed out Islamists from the upper echelons of power. That they have done it, because if you remember, when Musharraf had come to power, you had certain lieutenant generals with very, very pronounced Islamic orientation. They have subsequently been weaned. But somebody adhering to taqiyya, which is again a concept in Islam, whereby you hide your true orientations if there is actually a threat to your well-being, somebody adhering and projecting himself as a moderate is always feasible, as we are seeing.
Part of their strategy of war.
Their strategy. So that is always a feasibility, and we have seen in the past that every single attack that has taken place in an armed forces installation, there has been an insider who has colluded with the terrorists.
What about this TTP and BLA alliance? What do you think is the future for that?
Yeah, that's actually, to be frank, is a very, very interesting development. It's a purely a tactical alliance. I think both have come together, though ideologically being on the different spectrum, because BLA is left-leaning secularist and TTP is hardcore Islamist. But they have realized that both their enemies is the Pakistani army, and they feel that it makes sense to collude to erode the Pakistani state by targeting its army, because both realize that Pakistan today is an artificial state that's held together by its army. So if they know that if they can weaken the army, I think the fault lines within Pakistan will by themselves actually break this state, which will meet the objectives of both TTP as well as BLA.
So would we assume from all your very complicated assessments of the internal feuds that India is quite right to keep a long distance away from Pakistan at present?
I personally feel, again, this is my personal view, that we should, animus towards India actually helps Pakistan to strengthen. Because with so many fault lines, there are only three integrating factors that Pakistan has traditionally had. One is Islam, which today, as I said very clearly, is no longer an integrating factor. Second is army, which has artificially kept the state together. And third is animus towards India. So I personally feel that even if you want to give a stick to Pakistan, your posture should be polite, and you should make it very clear that your animosity is not with the population but with the state. That would help Pakistan to unravel faster, rather than assuming an hostile posture which actually forces people to come together. If you actually see, there was a time when Osama bin Laden was killed, there were auto rickshaws in Rawalpindi with banners written at the back, "Don't honk loudly, Pakistan army is sleeping." From that time, when we started beating the war drums, army again became the redeemer. So to my mind, if you actually want to deal with Pakistan, you need to have an iron fist and a velvet glove. You need to project that you have no animosity with the people while dealing with them strategically and tactically in whichever way you feel appropriate.
As long as the focus is on the unraveling of Pakistan.
I have no doubts that it is India's manifest destiny that a state created on two-nation theory, which poses an existential ideological threat to a secular India, needs to be unraveled for India to attain its ultimate destiny.
But that is very beautifully put. But if it unravels, where does, what's the outcome for India in terms of the kind of population or the kind of radicalized population that would possibly want to enter the country?
See, again, as I said, I have always postulated, and for a number of years I have said, that the Lebanonization of Pakistan is dangerous, but Balkanization of Pakistan is an interest, and there is a subtle difference between.
This important difference.
There is a subtle difference between Lebanonization and Balkanization. Lebanonization is where the outward geographical frontiers of a state remain intact, but the internal actors become so powerful and autonomous, not only in their interaction with one another, but also with external powers. As was the situation in Lebanon in 70s and 80s, where Hezbollah would one day fight with Amal militia, the other day they'll fight with Maronite Christians, third day with Israel, fourth day with Syria. Now that sort of a situation where Taliban becomes Pakistan's Hezbollah is a dangerous proposition. But a neat division into 3 or 4 states is in India's state, because the successor states would have too many problems to be resolved, and they would look to an external power to resolve those issues. And I think India fits the bill to mediate. And eventually India's manifest destiny takes it to a South Asian Union. The way maybe through South Asian Economic Union, you may call it Akhand Bharat, whatever you may like to call it. But India's destiny is that we need to have a South Asian Union at some stage or the other.
At present, Pakistan seems to have been very encouraged by what is happening in Bangladesh. And there's a certain outreach which Pakistan is trying to effect in Bangladesh. Should we be worried? Do you think the capacity of the Pakistani state at present is sufficient to cause anxiety in India?
See, while Pakistani state does not have the capacity to decisively influence events in Bangladesh, it can be a very, very big irritant. And to my mind, Bangladesh's creation was a nail in the two-nation theory's coffin, though it was not a complete sealing of the coffin because of geographical factors. The continuation of a regime in Bangladesh which professes to be pro-Pakistan is extremely dangerous for India's eventual aim of reuniting South Asia under its leadership.
Well, I think this is again one of those situations that we discussed in Bangladesh. It's never ending. It's it's evolving. It's for us to see in the future where it goes. But this is the second time you've been here. I hope you'll be here a third time as well, so that we
because
can.
The subject is not going to die out.
This is not going to die any soon. And in fact, now with Bangladesh, as I said, we need to be very careful that we don't do anything that legitimizes an illegal, illegitimate government in Dhaka. And this government at the moment is extremely fragile. And I think we need to take actions so that our long-term interests are protected.
No, absolutely. Also in context of the fact that ISI has had a lot of footprint previously in Bangladesh, which has affected India. And the chances of that happening again are quite likely.
Undoubtedly, already you see a lot of anti-India people have been released, people who were arrested for running of arms, carrying
Absolutely.
arms, etc.
But also the defense collaboration, the collaboration on weapons, these are all things that should be alarming us. But I think we'll have to wait and
And on
watch.
both sides, remember in Bangladesh, it's on both sides of the border, which we need to be worried about.
Absolutely.
And which is not the case in Pakistan,
It's not the case in Pakistan.
except in Kashmir.
Absolutely.
As I said, we need to be, I think, proactive. I wouldn't like to say something which I could have said that.
But before you say anything that you regret later.
Discretion has never been your strong point.
No, I know.
No, and
that,
before,
but
let me
tell
save
you,
him before he says something that he shouldn't. I think the northwestern border and the northeastern border, both borders are things that we should be looking at very closely.
Undoubtedly, we need to look at it. In fact, and I think, as I said, we need to act fast. That's why procrastination is not an option as far as Bangladesh is concerned.
But do you think we have been procrastinating?
Undoubtedly.
I see. And would you suggest or would you recommend any particular proactive measures?
Recognizing Sheikh Hasina as still the Prime Minister of Bangladesh and de-recognizing this particular regime.
Quite forthright. I mean, do you think we've been banking too much on getting signals from Washington?
See, getting signals from Washington, some action from Washington can definitely unravel the government. In case tomorrow President Trump says that we don't recognize this government, either it should go for elections or leave power, it could unravel the government. But such a possibility coming out from a transactional government in DC is not very strong, because I don't know, maybe Yunus or somebody may offer something which is far more lucrative to DC, because if somebody is willing to do even a deal with Beijing, he could always do a deal with Dhaka also. That feasibility always exists. So one really doesn't know what it is. But India is by itself in a position, I can tell you, if a decisive action is taken, bulk of the Bangladeshi army will stand by, will not intervene anywhere.
This is obviously not music to the eyes of some decision makers in India who believe that inaction is also action.
Whether inaction, I have always felt that Narasimha Rao policy will not work here. Procrastination is not an option as far as Bangladesh is concerned. Secondly, we should at least not do anything that legitimizes the setup in Bangladesh.
But I think we should also recognize the fact that Yunus seems like a very obstinate man. I don't think it's going to be very easy for him or for anybody to force him to let power go at this point. Otherwise, we would have seen some inclination, considering that everything is...
Your statement actually leads me to a historical position. When Mussolini was told that you don't trouble Pope, so he asked him, how many divisions does Pope have? So I would only say, how many followers does Yunus have? Can he even win a municipal election, leave aside a
Didn't he lose elections?
Well, I think the more interesting question now is is the Arakan National Army good enough to shake Yunus?
See, Arakan National Army at this point of time has no intention of shaking Yunus. They are willing to do trade with them. In fact, they are trading, now they are dealing with it, and they are quite happy trading with Bangladesh, because that fills up their coffers. Arakan National Army firstly wants to capture Sitwe. The day they capture Sitwe, they are already, what Arakan Army has achieved, I think no other ethnic group in Myanmar has achieved. They have not only captured more or less complete Rakhine state, they have moved into Chin state, and Chin National Army has accepted, yes, this territory is yours, and they are now moving into Bamar territories also. So they are doing a phenomenally good thing. They are really not interested at this point of time to go into Bangladesh or deal with Rohingya camps, which are just across the...
I think Arakan would be more interested in sending the remaining Rohingyas.
Well, as long as the problems of Rakhine aren't transferred to West Bengal.
Oh dear. I think that's a big ask. But having said that, on that note, I think the fight is going to be on the Naf River, because that river is used for a lot of supply of contraband items. But I don't think I agree with you that they have any interest in Bangladesh.
Thanks a lot to Alok.
Thank you.